Hey guys, Aaron here with another pen video. Hope everyone's doing well. And today I was wanting to bring last video's mystery pen to you guys. Now I know this pen, as I stated before, is not really so much a mystery. This is the Jinhao X750. And this is a very well-known fountain pen, much like the 159, Jinhao 159, or even the Jinhao X450. Very well-known fountain pens. I think a lot of people own them, and rightfully so. It's a reliable pen. I think it's a good entry-level pen. I know some people may argue that, but I think it, for the price that you pay for this pen and versus the quality that you get, it's definitely a nice pen. This pen is available all over the place. I know you can get it from Goulet Pen, for instance, is one example. I think they sell it on their website for $9.99. I've seen it at Birmingham Pen Company as well. Obviously, you can get it off of eBay. There is a multitude of different resources you can acquire this pen. And I've seen this pen as cheap as $2 to $3 and as high as $15 to $20. I'm sure in some cases, maybe even more expensive. I think in the $5 to $15 range is a good amount. I would say $10 or below would be ideal as far as the price for this pen. Now, as I stated before, this is a Chinese fountain pen. It is a full metal body. You can tell it has chrome hardware on it. And it does come with a standard international converter with it. My pen did not come with a cartridge or anything, but it did come with the converter like most Jinhao pens do. This is a standard number 6 size nib is what is inside this pen, so very similar to the Jinhao 159 or the 450, and has the same size nib. I will do a sizing comparison between the 159 and I do not have an X450, but I do have a 250 available, and I'll throw in the 886 I reviewed a couple videos back. It is a snap cap pen, so that's one thing that's really nice that I really like about this pen. It's a snap cap, so it's great for meetings, work, taking quick notes. If you need it for school and you need it to take notes, I think it's a really good thing that it's a snap cap. As I stated before, it's a metal bodied pen, and I think this pen, because of the overall structure of it, I think is actually more durable than the 159, and I'll kind of explain that here in a moment. So I think the pen's overall durability is solid. Obviously, with the coating that this has on it, I think over time that coating's going to wear off. I've noticed on a couple of my 159s, they have a similar coating, that some of that paint is starting to wear off of the body of the pen, especially if you cap them. I think that's definitely something that you may run into. So the overall size of this pen, so how big is it? So we'll do some sizing comparisons real quick. So here is a Jinhao 159. Here is a Jinhao 250 or X250. And just for the sake of argument, there is a Jinhao 886. So the overall length of this 750 is 5.6 inches. When you post the pen, it posts at 6.2 inches, and then unposted, it's 5 inches. So really a decent sized pen. You'll notice that the 159 is not much larger in length. Obviously in girth, it is much larger. It's a little bit, or it's about the same length of the 250 here, but girthier than the 250. And then the 886 is the smallest one in this lineup. So, as I stated before, it is a pull-off cap, and pops right off. It's got a nice, I like the way when the cap pops off, it pops off very nicely. Snaps back together. It makes a really nice sound. You can tell it's on there. I do like the section for this pen overall. It is just a regular resin or plastic material for the section. It does have a slight step down here, not extremely noticeable if you hold your pen up higher. And then of course the section tapers down, and then you'll see it has a chrome lip at the very end. Now, taking off the barrel reveals that converter here, and as you can tell, we've got a Jinhao branded converter. This is just a standard international converter, so you could put another converter in here if this converter happened to start leaking or anything like that. I have had issues with Jinhao converters in the past, so obviously you can change that out as well. Now, one thing that I stated kind of before is I think that this is a really pretty sturdy model. One of the things, you know, the 159 is obviously a very heavy pen. You could use this pen as a weapon practically. But one thing that's really nice, so I have my orange 159, I actually dropped it. And when I dropped it, the cap bent. And I actually had to kind of bend back the cap in order to recap the pen in order to get that cap back on the body of the pen. But you'll notice on the 750, your cap band is down at the very end of your cap, and it's a very wide cap band, but I think that's one thing that's kind of helps reinforce that. The material, this metal material here, is very thin, so if you drop it, the cap's already heavy, and you drop it from a decent distance onto, say, a cement floor or a tile floor, you've got a chance of doing damage here. So just kind of an example of how I feel like this pen is a little bit sturdier. Another example is the clip on the 159. I've always thought is a little bit flimsy. It just, for such a substantial pen, granted I know you're paying a lot of money for this, the clip is very flimsy. Whereas on the 750, I feel like the clip is just much sturdier and just feels nicer. So I definitely think this is a nice pen overall, especially for the price that you pay for it. And again, it's very versatile. It comes with a number 6 size nib, so you can change out the nib, do all sorts of different things with the nib, and it has a really good feed. Very similar to the 159. You can put different types of nibs on here, and the feed is generally going to keep up with those nibs. All right. So moving on to what's inside of this pen. So we take the cap off. I'm going to set the pen aside. You'll notice that you have a plastic cap liner in there. The pen posts very securely. No issues there. It does make for a more elongated pen. And I wouldn't say it's very back heavy, but for my hands at least, this is not a pen that I have to post, but you can post it. It posts securely. You're not going to have any issues with the pen or the cap falling off of the barrel. So now, what is actually inside of this pen? So we have an FPR nib in there. So that was kind of the special thing about this pen, is the nib, which I'm sure most of you already guessed. So it is an FPR nib. Now this is an FPR flex nib, and this is Kevin's Ultra Flex nib. So this is a steel nib. Now you'll notice that the shoulders of it have been ground down to kind of allow those tines to spread apart. It still has the long slit just like the other steel flex nibs. But these shoulders have been ground down, very similar to what you would see on like the Conklin Omniflex. I'm using that as an example because it's another steel flex nib that I'm aware of that has a very similar nib design and how it has been shaped and ground. Now, the idea behind it is it's supposed to offer a softer flexing experience when you're riding with the pen. Much easier to flex. You're not going to have to use as much pressure. And hopefully you'll see that in the riding sample. But I have noticed that it actually is easier to flex the pen. I compared it to my regular FPR and my Himalaya, my steel flex nib that I have in that. And I will say that this one is much easier to flex in this pen. The Jinhao feed in this 750 keeps up with it. I actually put this nib on my Gamma jumbo acrylic fountain pen, and I thought it would really work out well because you got an ebonite feed, and that feed has a pretty wide channel. But I kept having performance issues with the pen. Now that is an eyedropper pen. I'm sure there was a lot of other variables. I did heat set the nib and feed, but unfortunately it never produced the consistent writing that I was looking for. Now it wrote, but once I started to try and flex the nib, it would run dry and I would get a lot of ink starvation. So disappointing. I know that I can go to FPR and get an ebonite feed that will fit that pen that is meant for flexing, that has the dual channels or the 3 channels, I can't remember. And that might be something I do at some point. But as of right now, this nib works well in this pen. Now I did try to put this nib in my 159. And maybe one of you that's watching this video has got it to work, but the nib did not fit well in my 159. And it was actually, I was putting it in there and it started to kind of jam in there, and I did not feel comfortable forcing it any farther. So I stopped. It did take a little bit of wiggle room to get it into this one, but much easier, and I can pull the nib out if I need to much easier. So I feel much safer and feel like I made a better choice of putting it in this pen right here. But all in all, guys, that's really it. I hope the writing sample goes good with this. I actually really, the nib is, hopefully it shows in the writing sample how well the nib performs, at least for me. I think it suits this pen well. Like I said, I tried it in a few different other pens that take number 6 size nibs, and just overall, this is the pen that seemed to suit it the best, and gave me the most consistent writing experience. As far as the Jinhao pen, the X750, I think it's a great pen. I thought I had an X450 on hand. I could not locate it. I might have given it away to someone. I do like this pen better overall than the X450. If I remember correctly, my 450 was a little bit shorter. I could be wrong. One thing I do not like is the section in the 450 versus this one. I would take the 750 more. It has more of a traditional style section that I like more. For how I hold my pens. So this is overall probably next to the 159 my second favorite Jinhao pen. I really like my 159s, but I really like my 2 X750s that I have. I have another one in white as well. All right, guys, so up next I'm going to do a writing sample. We'll talk a little bit more about the FPR nib in the writing sample. Alright guys, so we're back. I wanted to show you guys something. So I had used this pen for several days in a row. Didn't really have any issues with it, and even when I was using it as flexing. Now I did let the pen sit, and I wrote with it a couple hours ago, and so this is the performance I had a few minutes ago. And you'll notice I've got some railroading here. It's trying to push the nib, and I just wanted to show this. So I had some, definitely some ink starvation issues with this. And so this was some of the writing I had earlier, and I didn't really have any issues with it. And that was just me kind of playing around with the nib and testing it out. So I'm going to try this again. We're going to see how it writes, but this is the first time I've had issues with this nib in this pen. So we'll see what happens. So this nib, again, we're going to talk about the nib primarily. So this is the FPR Ultra Flex. I mean, one thing you can definitely tell is this nib just pours out ink. I mean, it just lays down ink. It's a very wet writer. And when it writes consistently, it's very enjoyable. Now, this retails for $19 on FPR's website. I think one thing, if most of you, if you haven't bought off of FPR before, definitely sign up for Kevin's newsletter. you'll find out like he has sales all the time, especially on the weekends. And those are always good times to look on there and purchase pins and or nibs, all sorts of things. Because you can a lot of times find things at a discounted price. I think right now, today, as I'm recording this video, this nib is actually $15 on the website. So you can save if you know when to kind of look on there also. So looking at some of the flexing, so here's apps, well, here's like really just no pressure. So now we're gonna push it a little bit more. Now, one thing that's really cool is I really don't have to put a lot of pressure to get this thing to flex. And that's one thing that I think is really nice about the pen, is that it flexes very easily. You know, is it a flex like a vintage flex? No, it's still a still flex nib, but it definitely does not require a lot of pressure to perform any type of flexing. You know, there kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how it flexes, and it's just a fun pen to write with. And of course now it's working a lot better than it was before. And then I go to say that, there it goes. So not perfect by any means, and I think part of it may just be this feed trying to keep up with that nib, and the fact that I let it sit for a while. I did prime this feed a little bit, and now it's starting to write much better. So if this is a nib and pen combination that you're thinking about, you might have to deal with some hard starts, especially if you let it sit for any length of time. Now this is offered obviously in this two-tone, so you've got the gold / chrome finish, and then you can also get it in just a regular chrome finish. So there you can kind of see just how the line variation, I mean, you can go from pretty much an extra fine to, I don't know, that'd be like a double broad. I mean, it's definitely can give you some really nice line variation. I'm not the best person to show you flex style writing, obviously, but this is a fun pen to write with. Like I said, you can do this for everyday type writing, and then you can just really get this thing to flex like crazy as well. So just an enjoyable pen to write with, enjoyable nib to use, I should say. And I think this combination is seeming to work. And there, we just ran dry. A couple taps on the paper, and now it's working good. So, and part of it might be me, I don't know. So not perfect by any means, but it's one thing that you have to take into account when you do things like this and you modify pens that you're going to run into. As I stated before, this nib really reminds me of a Conklin Omniflex as far as how it is structured. And I like it. I think for $19, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? For me, it is. If flex writing is important to you, it may definitely be worth it. If it's not important to you at all, then look elsewhere. It's probably not a nib you want, but I really enjoy using it. It's fun to write with. It's fun to play around with as well. So guys, this is pretty much all I have. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Everyone take care. I'm going to show you the next mystery pen, and this pen is not much of a mystery. This is a fountain pen that is long overdue as far as a review goes, and there it is. It's pretty easy. I think I just gave it away anyways, but it's not really much of a mystery, but that will be the next review, so stay tuned for that. Like I said, that review is long overdue. I've got a couple pins upcoming that are going to probably be I'm hoping, much harder for you guys to identify. Guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Comment down below what you think about the nib. And everyone take care, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.